And for more legal analysis behind today's hearings, let's bring in Jessica Levinson. She's a CBS News legal contributor and a Loyola Law School professor. Hey, Jessica, thanks so much for being here. So because you're a professor, I kind of want to do a little bit of a civics lesson here. The Justice Department is part of the federal government, of course, but it's meant to be apolitical on some level. And we kind of heard Kinzinger, the Republican member of the committee, kind of frame this hearing about how the Justice Department is supposed to be politically independent. At the same time, however, it's staffed with, a lot of political appointees. So kind of how did you see that play out in today's hearing?
Well, I think we saw it play out actually in important ways. And this is one of the things I'm so glad that you highlighted, which is the Department of Justice is not the president's personal legal counsel, and it should not be subject to the president's desires and personal predilections. The Department of Justice serves the American people. Let's emphasize the name, Department of Justice. They administer the law, they enforce federal law, and I think that's part of the reason why they were able to stand up to the president who wanted them to essentially carry their water. There's a whole host of reasons why we want that Department of Justice to be free from political pressure. And in fact, right now, I think there are a lot of Democrats or more liberal people who are wishing the Department of Justice would indict the former president, who are hoping they'll hear these committee hearings and say, of course, we're going to go forward with criminal indictments here. But we want them to look at the facts, look at the law, make a determination as to whether or not they can show that there has been a federal criminal violation beyond a reasonable doubt. That's their job, not to say to the president, of course, we'll go ahead and succumb to your wishes. Now, how do you make that balancing test, or how do you balance that when you have career members of the Department of Justice and then some appointed members? I would say we do that in a lot of different departments on the state, local, and federal level. And because even when people are politically appointed, the understanding and idea is they still know the agency they're working for. They still know that this is supposed to be an independent agency.
Yeah, that's a really important point, and I think we heard that from Donahue and Rosen today, essentially saying that, they do not serve, they serve at the pleasure of the president, of course, but serve to carry out the law here. And I just think it's important to kind of have that frame. We heard, from these Justice Department officials who were basically telling the former president, or the then president, I should say, look, if you put Jeffrey Clark at the top of DOJ, we're all walking out, we're all quitting, we're all resigning. Can you kind of talk to us about the significance of this and how that could have played out?
Well, I think it really would have been quite a frightening scenario to have the Department of Justice be led by someone not only who doesn't have the experience, who probably is not competent, frankly, to lead a department that is that big with that many moving parts and that many different litigation arms, policy arms, but the idea that you would have the department led by somebody who is propagating conspiracies, who is potentially willing to move forward with illegal actions, maybe opening up a sham investigation into the election so that the president can say, look, the Department of Justice is investigating the election. I think the only way that they could prove their point to the president that you cannot do this is to threaten that they actually would resign. Not to say you can't do this, but to say we will leave if you do this.
And, we've been hearing from so many lawyers and attorneys over the past couple of weeks watching these hearings. Can you kind of explain, what's the difference between White House counsel, the president's counsel? Can you kind of explain the difference between these different kinds of lawyers that we've been hearing through this testimony?
So super briefly, kind of 30,000-foot view, what we have is, again, the Department of Justice really serving the American people, enforcing and administering federal law. Then we have the White House counsel that, again, is not the president's personal attorney. The White House counsel is there to advise the office of the president and to protect the office of the president. That's different from what is personally helpful to Donald Trump. that person is really charged with what is the right decision for whoever is in the Oval Office. And then, of course, we have the president's personal counsel. We have people like Rudy Giuliani, Sidney Powell, and we can see how they took very different tacks. At times, there's been kind of question as to whether or not they actually are representing the president or whether they were just on their own wanting to support the president. But they took very different tacks here, filing suits in federal court, which they're now subject to legal sanctions for. But again, very different roles. Department of Justice for the American people, Office of Legal Counsel, and, White House counsel for the inhabitant of the Oval Office. And then we have the president's personal attorney for the president.
And something that was really striking to hear today was that a number of Republican congressmen had asked the White House for pardons after the riot, especially Republican Congressman Matt Gaetz. What's the legal basis behind seeking these pardons, and would it have been realistic in your eyes? I mean, it seemed like they were asking for these blanket pardons.
So I want to caution a couple of things. One, accepting a pardon is not necessarily an admission of guilt. Asking for a pardon is not necessarily an admission of guilt. You could claim that asking for a pardon just shows you're worried about being federally criminally prosecuted, but you might think, for instance, that Biden's Department of Justice would be politically motivated. So I think their defense would be, well, we were worried about a witch hunt where the Department of Justice under Biden is just going after us for no reason, and it doesn't show we think we broke the law. Now, that might not be the best explanation, but I do think we need to be careful about saying you ask for a pardon, therefore you know you're guilty. Now, it is possible to ask for prospective pardons, to ask for broad pardons. This is a power that under the federal Constitution is given only to the president, and there are very, very few limits on it, as we've talked about over the last number of years. So just a word of being a little more tempered about, if they asked for it, it shows they knew. They know that they're guilty.
Yeah, that's a really important distinction, especially since that's what we've been hearing from some members of Congress. Jessica Levinson, thank you so much for your time as always and for that civics lesson. I think we all need a little reminder of who these people are and why this is all important. So thank you so much.
Thank you.